Hey YouTube, this is the Art of Prepping. Just want to talk about for a few moments about the different types of hobbies and interests that tend to go together. So for those who are into prepping or bushcrafting, survival, camping, outdoors, hiking, and even hunting, for some reason, I'm not really sure why, but there tends to be a preference for gear in certain bundles, and this is not universal and in its entirety, but I have seen more so than not that people who are into especially backpacking gear and being prepared are into flashlights, and more so than you would need to be, or the interest level on a hobby level, or even a collector's level. I see that that's a lot more of a reality for a lot of people than just the average civilian that isn't into preparation. So it's not just related or limited to flashlights, though. It tends to be knives, guns, and also certain tools. Some people get into multi tools. That's one thing. Maybe it's just because of cost, and because I would want the nicer ones. I don't have that fixation of multi-tools, but certain pocket knives and certain types of flashlights, I have to say I do get a touch of that of the collector's fever, if you will. And I would also have to bundle into that grouping bags, packs, and pouches, and that would include backpacks as well, of course. There's just so many things that kind of go hand in hand. The longer I get into preparedness, the more that I find myself wanting to try and collect even a vast or even a broader range of fire starters, and even have a larger collection of ferrocerium rods, or ferro rods, metal matches, whatever you want to call them. And so I didn't really expect that. I thought maybe I'd get just one or two of them and be okay with it. But once I found out how fun and cool it was and how many different types there are, and ferro rods come in so many different types of combinations and mixtures of cerium in the ferrocerium rod, I have to admit, though, that it got pretty addictive pretty fast. And that's what this video is about. It's just interesting to note and to observe these patterns that we have, us people who are into the everyday carry movement, or the preparedness movement, or so-called outdoors movement, or prepping, or bushcraft. There's all these labels, and they do have a lot in relations to each other, a lot of similarities. And I know that some people collect machetes. Some people collect tomahawks, axes, and I've noticed, though, that those kind of people, once again, are still the outdoors person, which is somewhat obvious, but also those people who are more into preparedness or homesteading. So there's some things go hand in hand with other things, and it's just kind of interesting to note that and to point that out. I'm pretty sure we all know that. I mean, you go to any type of like blade forum, and you'll see that they also have, and most of them at least, have subcategories and subforums, or other members from other forums that are into not just knives, and knives of all types too. It doesn't mean it's not just fixed blades or folders, but they're also into guns, or they're also into maybe tactical or outdoors backpacking or things like that. So I'd just be curious to see what types of hobbies and interests that you have, and what kind of grouping you have, if you've experienced that. And I'm pretty sure you have. That just like it's hard to stop at one knife a week, or one knife a month, or whatever your quota is it also hard for you to only get one flashlight every couple months? Or do you have this running tally? Just like the more research I do on like the stream lights, especially some of their smaller pin lights and stuff, I tell you, they're very interesting, especially when they keep increasing the quality and the light output and the run times. I originally was going to get me the new 4th generation Streamlight Micro Stream, but when I saw the new 4th generation, and I think it's the 4th generation, the Stylus Pro by Streamlight, whatever their newest variation that's pumping out now 90 lumens for I think it's like almost 6.5 hours or 6.25 hours, something like that, for the same price as the MicroStream. And they come in different colors, which I probably won't use that option. I think black is just fine, but man, it's just like a little more than like around 1.5 inches more longer in length, you get a lot more than the MicroStream. And I still love the MicroStream. I think it's still pretty much the best EDC out there for if you don't need a high level of light output, and it takes care of 80 to 90% of all your tasks. But it's one of those things, though, the more you look, the more you find. And I think that's what happens when people are looking for gear to satisfy their needs in the outdoors. They find things, and they find the whole preparedness movement, the whole prepper movement. And then that kind of naturally evolves into collecting gear, which kind of makes you fall into hobbies that you didn't even plan on being into. And then those hobbies become borderline obsessions, if not small addictions that don't rule your life and don't keep you from paying the electric bill. At least I hope not. But, and I'm sure there are cases of people going too far with anything, any hobby and any type of collecting or buying, but it is on your mind off and on throughout the day. And I've noticed that myself, is that even though I don't let it dominate my thoughts, I just kind of sometimes think about, okay, if I could have anything for my everyday carry, let's just say your EDC could be anything and there was no price constraints, what would it really be? What knife would you really pick? What flashlight would you really pick? And I mean, those are the fun conversations, just like when you're growing up and you're a little bit more free and naive, and that's not always a bad thing to be naive, and you're kind of just thinking about things, and you're like, man, when I grow up, I want to be X, Y, and Z. And you don't tend to do that the older you get. The older you get, sometimes you tend to box yourself and limit yourself. So I think it's sometimes good to start out in the conversation, at least for yourself, when it comes to gear, and maybe even where you want to be in your life, at the end result, the end goal, at where you want to be. And then work yourself back to where you are now, and then find your way back to where you want to be, since you already know where it is. So you have a direction. And so by working backwards, it's a type of problem solving that we sometimes just don't use very much in modern society. We talk about doing certain steps to get to where we want, but we don't even really know or have a very concrete, sometimes ideology of what it is we really want. We just think we know. But when we really know what we want, we can always move backwards and meet ourselves where we are, and then carry forward from there. So just some thoughts about that. And going back to if you could have anything, there was no constraints, and you knew what size and weight the item would be, and the brand and everything, and there was no price constraints, you had infinite amount of money, what would it be? I mean, it makes it really interesting, because there's a lot of everyday carry pocket knives that I think are like, 10 out of 10 for that purpose. But if you could, remove the constraints of money, and what would you do to your 10 out of 10 pocket knives for daily carry? Would you change the handle material? Would you change the blade steel? If you could tweak anything, how would you really want it? And there's a lot of things, I found out that most of the things that I really would want are not even made. You would have to have everything custom made. But there's a lot of things, if almost all of them, that are so close to what I really want and what I like, that it meets everything just perfect. I'm just thinking out loud. I had a thought a few days ago about the K-Bar Dozer, the Hunter model, that very inexpensive $20 to $22, very slimline knife that's just over 2 ounces. You can get on Amazon. They come in various colors. Excellent, super great knife. It's really great, especially for the value. And I think it's an Oz 8A or something steel, but it's very good. And this knife, it's just, besides the actual, I think it's a nylon reinforced handle. I could be wrong. It could be just a more standard polymer handle. But if that handle was simply a little bit of a mid-textured G10, maybe, and it was also in a color, maybe in an olive drab or maybe a coyote brown. And then maybe there could be another model that would have, because that model doesn't have any internal liners. If that knife could also come in maybe a micarta scale, if the micarta would be strong enough, I'm pretty sure it could be, because it's a very light duty task knife anyways. Now that would be cool too. So have it in G10 and micarta, two different variations in different colors for wherever you're, to match your apparel. Now that would be cool. I would collect the entire collection, especially if they were earth tones. And I got thinking also just little tweaks to the knife that I would make, like the pocket clip. I would probably make it out of titanium, and how the thumb stud feels, and which it feels just fine. But there's just a lot of those kind of things, that you kind of think about, and you almost like, for example, also on the dozer, I wouldn't mind maybe one that had just a full serrations up the whole spine. Up the whole blade edge, and the spine having a little bit more of some jimping or ribbing. It's just stuff like that. So you could have one for everyday cutting tasks that would be a plain edge, and then another one that would be reserved as a self-defense knife. And that would be a pretty small self-defense knife, but there's a lot of knives for self-defense that aren't that big. There's a lot of hideaway knives and stuff, so you don't need a massive blade for that. But just having something is better than nothing. So with that being said, what kind of things have you thought about that if you had unlimited resources and maybe you could even pay a custom knife maker to even tweak their own design to give you exactly what you want, what would it be? And I've done that just on a few items, just on a flashlight and that dozer I thought about. And actually I have thought about a couple of variations of the Spyderco Delica, but the more I look at the Salt 1 in all black, I think it's powder coated black blade, in the full serrations, the Spidey edge, I think that's getting pretty close to perfect right there. No liners in the scales, and at 2 ounces and about 4 inches in closed length, I don't know how much better it can get. I mean, honestly, that is really pretty freaking great. So I think knives and flashlight and just gear in general, especially EDC gear and tactical gear, is getting so refined, and there's so many more options than there were even a few years ago, that you can be so picky and actually find exactly what you want, or within a couple increments of exactly what you want, which I think is just really fun and really promising. It makes you wonder what is just right around the corner. What's coming out next week? What's coming out next month? Or at SHOT Show or at Blade Show next year? I mean, what's gonna pop out? I mean, is there gonna be a complete revolution, of a new idea or a new format or a new layout for a folding knife? I mean, there's quite a few things that are out right now that are brand new, that are pretty revolutionary. And I think that with all the new technologies and supercomputers and people having such a wide girth of knowledge of making these tools, it wouldn't be overly shocking to see some really neat new stuff come out. Just like gun designs, even though I'm not really that much into, gun collecting or nothing like that, I just sometimes try to keep up with what's out there and what's new just to be informed. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a couple new designs that are in the works that would revolutionize, the gun industry and replace things like the AR-15 or the Glock, standard, like Glock 19, the best-selling handgun in the world. Because these guns have been around for many decades. People kind of forget that these guns are a bit dated. They're still very useful, and they're not outdated in the terms of usefulness as a tool, but the technology actually is many decades old. And so I just wouldn't be surprised if there's some things in the works, if there's manufacturers that are developing these technologies, and so the older we get, the more things that could come out. And I think that's a fun thing for the collector and for the person who's slightly addicted to gun and knife and flashlight and backpacking and gear in general. So thanks for listening. And this video is going to be in lower resolution just so that it'll be quicker upload time. And so basically this is just me rambling. And thanks again for all your comments too. Thanks.